Hello, Degrassi fans, and welcome to the Season 2 bonus episode for the Degrassi Kid podcast. This has been an amazing season. We broke down the complete history of Degrassi in a 6-part series. We did some bonus episodes over here on Patreon, and we wrapped it all up with the story of how my dreams came true. And I can't say thank you enough. I was talking to Linda about this. She was like, is there still like a pretty big Degrassi fan community online? And I was like, Linda, of course there is. Like, I literally couldn't do any of this if there weren't fans who just loved the show so much. Look, what would I do? Just sit here by myself talking about it? So I have to say a thank you to this group of people specifically, because you guys are the ones who have gone above and beyond to make all of this happen for me. I recognize so much that I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Degrassi fans who threw me up on their shoulders and praised me as this super fan. So that is why I am so happy to do episodes like today where we just get to sit back and hang out with each other. Because you guys are the ones that made all of this happen for me. So thank you. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the future of the podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about Degrassi. Some people submitted some questions, and some of you even submitted fan theories, which I thought was very, very cool. I always love when those come in. And so I'm excited to just sit back and chat with you guys. We also hit our goal for Degrassi Trivia Night. I'm so excited. I'm watching the results come in, and I feel like it's going to be an even 50-50 split on if it's a weekend or a weeknight. So we'll have to figure that out, but that's okay. It's looking realistically like it might be after my trip, which makes me feel bad because I wanted to have it right after the results came in. But I am currently in the middle of trying to plan a week-long vacation to Toronto and get as many Degrassi things as I can in there. So it might make more sense to just have it after that trip. But then I'll promise I'll make it even more special if I have to push it back that far. But anyway, that's all for the future. For now, let's dive into the finale bonus episode for Season 2 of the Degrassi Kid podcast. This first question is the perfect lead-in for this episode, so I'm so appreciative that Sierra left this comment. Sierra and I are Degrassi best friends. We talk almost every day about the show, and she just knows so much, has some amazing perspectives, and is a great person to talk to. So thank you, Sierra, for submitting this question. She wants to know, what are some new topics you want to talk about on the podcast? So I do have a vision for Season 3 that I want to share with you guys. Last season, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do an episode on the history of Degrassi, and then the next week I'd interview someone who was on that era. Like, for example, when I was doing the history of Degrassi High, well, the next week I'd want to talk to Stacey Mistician, who played Caitlin Ryan. But scheduling at that specific time became so hard. First of all, Retro Kid announced their merch launch around the same time, which meant the Degrassi High cast got tied up, like Stacey Mistician got very busy. Then I started working with Linda on this web series. And not only was I working, then I had to go travel for like a week. I also got COVID during this time. I also went through a hurricane at this time. So like scheduling interviews on a schedule just became impossible. But what was amazing is that I inadvertently had set myself up to create Season 3. So I had a lot of yeses, a lot of people who are willing to be on the show. And after the book launch slows down, I'll be able to do that. So my goal is for Season 3 to create 6 episodes where I interview people from the show and give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. And then we'll also be 2 or 3 bonus episodes on Patreon at that time. Now, an exciting announcement is that our very first guest for Season 3 will be Linda Schuyler. She's coming on the podcast to promote her book, and we'll be asking her some questions that have popped up along the way. And we'll talk a bit about what it was like to film our web series together. Now, unfortunately, this episode has already been taped. We filmed it in advance, but I still encourage you, if you have any questions that you're dying to know from Linda, please leave them in the comments, because I will be seeing her again in Toronto, like if not next week, the week after. It's coming up very, very quickly. So if there's any questions that I can get answered for you, I will definitely still try. And a big thank you to Sierra for asking that question. It was absolutely the perfect question to ask because I needed to answer it. So just an idea of who you can expect on the show. Liberty Van Zant will be coming on the podcast. Of course, Fiona Coyne, Annie, will be coming back. Her promise was that she'd be on the show anytime I needed her to. So I will cash in on that this season. And for example, the actor who played Mr. Perino will be joining us. So the rest I will try to keep a secret until we can get some questions in for them. But I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that Annie Clark is going to come back if I'm going to have a whole season full of guests. So I can't wait to connect you guys with some Degrassi stars, and I hope you enjoy the new season. Samantha Bethel asked a question that I thought was so funny. Samantha is one of our most brand new subscribers on Patreon, so we'll give her a very warm welcome. Hi, Samantha. She joined just a few days ago, and I am so eager to hear what you think about all of the extra content and what we put out there, so thank you so much. And her question was, how do you feel about Eli? He was such a heartthrob for those of us who are interested in men. What's the lesbian perspective on him that isn't clouded by thirst? And oh my gosh, I thought this question was so funny, because this comes up a lot in my life. You know, I'm a huge Degrassi fan. Everyone always wants to talk about Eli. But I have to say, I was so unfazed about what was going on with Eli and Claire, because I was just so in love with Fiona when I was watching the show. So all the way that the straight girls felt about Eli, that is how I felt about our baby Fifi. So I get the reaction I do, but from my very gay perspective, just like, he wasn't anything special, you know? I thought he was crazy. And I was like, Claire, you got to get away from this. But I did love him as a friend to Adam. I thought he was a very good support system and just like a fun guy to be around in that regard. But no, I did not think he was hot. I just thought he was insane, to be honest. But I remember when I met Monroe Chambers, that's the actor who plays Eli in real life, I met him at the exact same time that I met Annie Clark. And I remember I actively like planned out how I was going to do this. I was like, okay, I'll go and meet Monroe first. I'll say hi, I'll say thank you, and then I'm a fan, and then I'll leave Annie to the last so that I can spend the rest of my time with her. We can take our pictures and get our signatures and everything. And it's so funny because when I tell people I've met Monroe Chambers, that's probably the biggest reaction that I get of fangirls being like, oh my God, I would die to meet him. And he's wonderful, he's great, but he just didn't have that kind of impact, you know, of like being a fangirl from the show. So I just love Fiona so much that I had to get everything else out of the way so I could meet Annie. So most people don't even realize that the day that I was an extra on Degrassi and met Annie Clark, 30 seconds before that, I had also met Eli Goldsworthy. But thank you for the question, Samantha. I'm so happy that I got to talk about that. Our next question comes from Dave Wilson. Dave has been a long time supporter of the podcast, and he's also done something incredible, which is inspire the next generation to watch Degrassi. Dave has his own Degrassi kid at home who he's encouraged to watch the show, and I've seen recently that they also got their own Zit Remedy t-shirt, so we match now, and I love that. But Dave wants to know, if you could work behind the scenes on Degrassi on the reboot, what would your dream job be? He listed some examples like producer, script editor, publicist, or showrunner, and honestly, I think I would be a little too intimidated to do those kind of top tier jobs. I would want to do something like JD Schipple did. He was the office assistant on Degrassi. Now, to anyone who did this job, I'm sure it was just like getting coffee and making copies and reacting to fan mail. But to me, I would love that. I would be able to just like walk around the set of Degrassi whenever I wanted to. I'd get to hang out with the Degrassi stars whenever I wanted to. And I would feel really good being like a supporter to the other people who are doing jobs. Like I would want to support the producer and the script editor and the showrunner and do those little things because I would feel like such a helping hand. But one job that I think I would be really good at is being like a fan consultant, like keeping the pace of the tone of the show, and this is what it means to be Degrassi. Like, oh hey, there's two adults talking in this scene, or oh hey, like that doesn't really, like that's too much sending the message that this is right and this is wrong. Degrassi's all about just showing you that you have options. So I think being the kind of a consultant that gets to help the show keep the Degrassi brand while also still being a part of something that can help Degrassi fans be connected to the show. I think that is something I would be really, really good at. But being an office assistant is the job that I would probably really, 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 really love. And getting to respond to fan mail will be really fun because then I get to talk to you guys. These next questions are more based about the Degrassi show itself and some Degrassi fan theories. So Riley asked a question, and Riley has been a longtime supporter of the podcast. They signed up for my mail-out tier specifically for their birthday, which I thought was so, so sweet. Like, to be like someone's birthday gift to themselves was something that supports my podcast. Oh my gosh, that was so, so sweet. So Riley wanted to know, how do I feel about the Degrassi nudes plot line? So at the very end of Degrassi The Next Generation, before they transferred into the next class, there was a storyline where the Degrassi kids were raising money for Spirit Squad uniforms. And the way that they did this was by basically like running a sex ring and selling nudes. So anyway, what I think you can probably hear my opinion in the way that I just said that, but The way that I felt about it is, so Zoe Rivas was a part of this plotline, and previously she had been the victim of sexual assault. So had the story been framed as Zoe was now like selling her nudes or being involved in distributing her own nudes as a reaction to her trauma, that I could understand. That is a story that I think could have been very powerful. And I also can understand why this was a story on Degrassi, because I remember, during that time, it was constantly coming out in the news, or you would see it on Reddit, that kids, this was happening in high schools, and kids were constantly getting cracked for sharing nudes of each other. Even I think, cell phones weren't super a thing when I was in high school, but I remember at the tail end of it, them kind of having a discussion about those photos and that it is child pornography when you distribute it. So I remember that being a topic around the point in time. And again, framed as a trauma response, I would have loved it. However, the idea that, like, oh my gosh, this was the only way they could raise money for their uniforms. Like, and oh, my dad can't find out about it because he's a politician. And oh, like, it just... And, like, Grace was hacking the system to make sure that it could happen. It just felt too elevated. And I think that this is where season 13 and 14 of The Next Generation started to kind of fall off. Like, Zig and Tiny are in a gang. And, Claire's her baby daddy is either Drew or Eli. And then she's a miscarriage. Like, these stories felt a little too Riverdale, a little too Pretty Little Liars, and too elevated, and not necessarily about telling real stories. I think the nudes plotline is based on reality of what happens, but they just took it to the most extreme point that they could. And I think some of the reason why it falls flat is because when we get to Degrassi Next Class, they kind of transition back into being a little more regular high school, right? Kids are going through things that are a little bit more relatable, and they're not in gangs, and they're not like fucking running child pornography rings. You know what I mean? So point blank, what do I think of the Degrassi nudes plotline? I think I understand where they got the story from. I see the potential that's inside of it, but I think Degrassi got lost in the drama during that period of time, and their storylines didn't hit the same way that they did in the earlier seasons. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. This next question comes from Sam Cheverie, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I'm constantly chatting with Sam, because Sam, admittedly, was my high school crush and my internet crush, and has been the person I've been in love with on the internet all of this time. So we love Sam, and Sam's question is, which Degrassi High character do you think deserved more? Whether that's a better storyline or more screen time. And this was a very easy answer for me. My answer to this is very easy. Maya Goldberg. Justice for Maya Goldberg. If you don't know, Maya was, she was friends with like Caitlin and Kathleen and Diana, and she used a wheelchair. And she did have some storyline. She did have a storyline where her friends all went to the movie theater, and the movie theater wasn't accessible. So they were like, oh, we don't want to hurt her feelings. Like, she won't be able to come in, and we don't want to make her feel bad for that. So we just won't tell her about it. And of course she becomes upset about this, and she tells them like, hey, there's other movie theaters, or we could have had a sleepover at my house. Like, don't just discount me from that. That is kind of her main storyline, but that storyline is also takes place mostly without her in it. It's just kind of like about her, and she's mostly in the background, or she's mostly supporting her friends. I would have loved to see, what is it like for Maya to go to school? For example, she talks about, one of the girls is kind of shy to ask her, like, can you have sex, for example? And Maya says, yes, I just have to, like, wait for the right guy, and it'll be special. But I would have loved to see a day in Maya's life where she wakes up and she goes to school, and she faces these roadblocks of maybe she can't get through the entrance at some of the locations, or maybe she has a crush on a guy, but she knows because she's in a wheelchair, he'll never like her back. Like, I wish we could have seen what high school was like from Maya's perspective, and I thought we were going to get that in The Next Generation when we had Nadia Ymir, who was also kind of the wheelchair user of Degrassi. But again, she kind of fell off. She was always just kind of in the back and reacting to things. And we never got to see what that perspective is like. And I think there would have been a lot of really good stories there. The next question comes in from Marie, who goes by Westbridge Slim. They joined on Patreon just a few days ago. They're very fresh, so welcome. And already they're diving into it with some amazing fan theories that they commented about. One that stood out to me is that Jay Hogart was originally written to be Darcy's older brother. I thought this was amazing. She said that when Rick kisses Darcy on the cheek, this is the moment that Jay's reaction really gets fired up. He threatens Rick to stay away from her. And, we all know that this snowballs kind of into the moment where the paint and feathers drop on Rick, which was all Jay and Spinner's doing until they push it on Jimmy. So I think this is what I love about Degrassi fans, because honestly, that's not something I would have picked up on myself, is that connection of why is he so mad about Darcy specifically. And I love fans who watch the show and pinpoint these things, because you also commented that your boyfriend has a theory about Snake and Terry. And I gotta know this. I think I could talk to you about Degrassi all day long. Now I kind of want to go back and watch those episodes and be like, yeah, I can totally see the nugget of truth there of Jay Hogart being written to be Darcy's brother. Now I just want to go back and watch the show and see that from your perspective. And if you guys have any more Degrassi fan theories, please leave them in the comments. I always think they're so fun to dive into. It's so fun to get this kind of idea about the show and then dive into it and see all those points that we can make. So that is, you know what? You've got me convinced. Jay Hogart was originally written to be Darcy's older brother. You got me on board. And our final question comes from Degrassi CSI. I would call them the Degrassi historian of the entire fandom. They are constantly posting old newspaper articles and old photos and old clips and things that just usually would be lost somewhere in a time capsule. They are somehow able to find them. I would say they probably have a bigger access to Degrassi history than I ever could have. So they are someone that I rely on constantly. So go follow Degrassi CSI on Instagram. You will not regret it. And their question was, what are some collectible items that you have on your Degrassi Holy Grail list? And they mentioned that there is the Degrassi Raps on UNICEF video. So basically, in the late 80s or early 90s, Degrassi they worked with UNICEF and they did a rap on rights where the cast rapped, and there's only a nugget. I think there's a 30-second clip from this, and the video has seemed to be lost forever. And it's lost forever if even Degrassi CSI can't find them. So I also would love to find this amazing video, but for me, it's the Degrassi Craft Dinner Box. In 2002, 2003, Kraft was a huge partner for the show. You'll even see them in people's lockers and stuff. If you watch the show closely, you'll see Kraft is very clearly a sponsor. And in the 2002-2003 season, they put out this box. It has Ashley's on it and Toby's on it, and you could win a trip to the set. The fact that I have never, ever, ever, ever been able to find one of these has made it my holy grail on my collector's list. And obviously the thing about it too is people who bought it opened it and used it and threw away the packaging, right? And anyone who did keep it probably is never getting rid of it ever again, or has forgotten that they even own it and it's a box somewhere. So I think the reality of me ever owning this freaking Degrassi Craft Dinner Box is about 0%, but because I can't get my hands on it, I want it so, so badly. So that's my Degrassi Holy Grail, is the Degrassi Craft Dinner Box from 2002, 2003-ish. And that's our bonus episode for the season 2 finale. Thank you guys so much for submitting your fan questions. After I get this up and edited, the next thing I'm going to be figuring out is the Degrassi Trivia Night and working on the announcement for the mail-out packages. I am so excited for you guys to see who I've been working with. Christmas's bonus package, the December bonus package, you guys are going to love it. There's a nice surprise that I'm throwing in there for you guys, and I've worked out all the details on that, and just know that you're going to be happy campers. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And we'll see you very, very soon for season 3, where we kick off the series with Linda Schuyler. Bye, guys.